When you claim Social Security is one of the biggest decisions you're going to make in your retirement. And for years, I think that the advice you've been given from my industry is wrong. Here are a few key points I think you need to consider when making this monumental decision. First things first, what is Social Security? I think most people know this, but it's a governmental benefit that you pay in while you work. So when you reach retirement age, which right now full Social Security retirement age is 67, but it has changed in the past, it's likely going to change into the future. But what happens is they calculate your benefit based on your earnings in a special little calculation that's way outside the scope of this, and frankly, is really boring, based on your earnings. Now, it's the highest 30 years of your earnings that's indexed for inflation. That's all you need to understand. We're not going to go into the boring complexities of this, okay? So that's your Social Security. What you need to understand is, too, you can claim it early, starting at age 62, or you can delay it all the way till age 70. But what happens is if you claim it before 67, they bring down your benefits. It's a percentage of your full benefit based on the year. Or if you delay it, they up your benefits. Now, for years, I have seen my industry implore people, you need to wait. You need to wait to claim your Social Security benefit, which makes sense from a purely financial and technical standpoint. Yes, you will get more money. There are a few things that this advice misses. The first thing that this misses is the fact that most people nowadays don't have pensions, and even if they do, they're not large enough pensions to live off from. So what does that mean? That means you're going to have to live off from your investments. This brings into our old friend sequence of return risk, or the risk that the market is going to drop right after you retire, and therefore you're having to sell investments that are decreasing in value, locking in your losses. This is, to me, the biggest risk in retirement. Because what happens is if you have a 30-year retirement, in those first 5 years, you're getting hammered with bad returns. And if you don't have additional income, such as Social Security, you guessed it, now we're having to be forced to sell some investments because we don't have anything else to live off from. So it just increases that already monumental risk to a point where, personally, once again, if this were me, I wouldn't want to take that on. But by pulling Social Security earlier, now we're getting guaranteed income that's indexed for inflation, because that's one of the benefits of Social Security is it actually increases every year, typically. So it's just something that people don't consider, the fact that, hey, I'm going to have to live off from other means until I can get Social Security. The second point I think is even larger. The more I do this job, the more I start to understand that it's much more about people and their emotions and how they think about the world and their perceptions than it is strictly about the technical financial aspects. There is a big difference between your lifespan and what's called your health span. Essentially, your health span is the years in which you are healthy, you have energy, you have your health and things like that. I have found that most people, when they get above the age of 70, that health span really starts to dwindle. They might live to be till they're 90, but how many really good years do they have, especially in those last, say, decade and a half? I think this is one of the biggest things to consider when you're thinking about when to pull Social Security. The fact that if you start pulling it earlier, you can take trips, you can redo the house, you can do all these things you've been waiting for because you have that additional income. And I think that needs to be talked about more. Because how long do you really have to travel? To play with your grandkids, to play those rounds of golf? Nobody knows, but there's no time like the present to ensure that you're taking advantage of it while you can. Because as you get older, you're likely going to start to have health issues, mobility issues even. Your heart, your lungs, everything might be great. Everything's going to ache. I'll give you a personal experience. My parents retired in their early 60s. They took trips all over the place. Northwest, Southwest, Northeast, Alaska, pretty much anywhere in America they've been to, with especially those first 5 years of retirement. They're now in their mid-70s. They don't feel like traveling anymore. And this is extremely common for people. It's not even necessarily a health thing. It's just they don't have the energy anymore. And I am so glad that they took those trips when they did and that they started pulling that Social Security benefit when they did. The other thing to keep in mind is if you actually run the numbers, if you start pulling at 62 versus 70, you likely have to live into your early 80s to see the true benefit. And sometimes we don't always have that. It depends on longevity, your health. We just don't know what's going to happen in the future. So when I think about this decision, I think about a couple of things. I think of it in terms of which would you rather have? Would you rather have guaranteed income now that you know you can utilize, or would you rather wait into the future? Yes, you're going to have a larger income, but you might not have the physical ability to always use that. And there's no right answer here. I'm not trying to say that one size fits all. And that's what my industry, I feel like, tries to do to you. They try to say, oh, you gotta wait, you're gonna get more money. And the main point of this video is I want you to think about it. I want you to think about your life. Because I think when it comes to financial planning, the most important aspect of this is figure out what you want your life to look like in retirement, build a plan around it. Don't listen to the cookie cutter approaches. You got to do this, you got to do that. That's not how this should work. And I'd like to share with you something else that I think of when I'm talking about this topic in healthspan versus lifespan. I recently saw a great little clip. It was a pastor who was giving a graduation speech to some graduates, obviously. And he was talking about how he's held the hands of, in his estimation, probably thousands of people in their dying moments. And he said to this class of graduates, you know what they didn't talk about? They didn't ask me to bring in their trophy so they could see him one last time. And they didn't talk about their college diplomas. They didn't talk about all their financial accomplishments. You know what they wanted? They want to see those who they love. And that's another reason, I think, to at least consider the possibility of taking Social Security early, because we don't know how long we got with our loved ones. I was just talking to a client today. They're taking a great cruise. They're bringing their grandkids. They're spending the money. How do you put a price on that? And how do we ensure that we're going to be able to take those trips? To me, you schedule them now. You do them now while you can, as opposed to 10 years from now, or who knows. So to reiterate, I'm not saying that you absolutely should be taking Social Security early. I think you should at least consider the possibility and understand the implications of early versus late. When to pull Social Security is one of the biggest decisions you're ever going to make in retirement. And a lot of this can be confusing. Talk to someone who can actually run the numbers for you, who can show you projections and simulations about what your plan looks like. And if this video gave you a different way of thinking about this topic, great. That's the purpose of this channel. I'll catch you on the next one.